Bridget. We're actually going to add one more piece to this. It's going to be about the trustless and decentralized trade supply chain. So I want to give you all a little bit of empathy for what it's like in the trenches between Uniswap and the settlement layer, and how a swap actually happens, and what work is still to do there, so that more researchers and builders can make sure that this part of Ethereum also stays decentralized. What I mean by supply chain is from the UI, like MetaMask, to an order book, like CowSwap, to a solver, like Barter, to a builder, like Titan, to a proposer, like the Ethereum validators. There's a lot going on, and much of the research that we do today focuses on the last part, the proposer. However, all of these other parts that we have in front of them are at the moment, for the most part, trusted and centralizing. This is common knowledge to people who are paying attention to PBS and the solver market. However, we're taking it nowadays as for granted and inevitable. But if we do, then we are in trouble. This is a metaphorical image for what DeFi looks like. If we want to build economy on top of DeFi, then DeFi is majorly built on the trade supply chain. Whatever you want to do, lend, leverage, swap, you're ultimately going to end up depending on the solvers and the builders to do these interactions. And if we have a decentralized settlement layer, and we don't have a decentralized trade supply chain, then we don't really have DeFi. We will end up in the same mess that we have today. This is a photo I took in a Thai pharmacy, and they charge 3% on using MasterCard. And there is an explanatory image of why you charge 3% for that. This is a result, ultimately, of a trusted system that introduces too high barriers of entry, that leads to centralization, and then ends up leading to monopoly pricing. Also to inefficiencies. I tried to send, at the moment I'm waiting for money to arrive in Mexico, that urgently is needed there, and it's been taking 3 days and it's still not there yet, because sometimes the ACH takes 3 to 4 business days. These are unacceptable, and you cannot build a functioning economy on such high friction infrastructure. This is the same thing that might happen in DeFi if we don't pay attention to keeping the entire trade supply chain decentralized and trustless. Now, that poses the question, what makes decentralization ultimately possible? And there are a bunch of things that you can think about, but they all come down to simplification. And I'm going to try to convey this in a picture. Sometimes I think about the market or the economy as a whole as a sort of fractal, right? You have all this blue ocean where the valuable contributions are still to be uncovered for how do you actually build products that help and improve society. And then you have the dark spaces that we already uncovered, like spending time here and spending effort in the dark spaces will not ultimately innovate, will not ultimately add anything new. And to add something new, you need to get to the edge, and then you can contribute. However, a market where there's a large distance between the current state and the edge, that is a market that leads to centralization, because it's a large barrier of entry. You alone will not be able to cross this barrier. You need a team of 100 people, and it favors economies of scale, so it leads to centralization. Now, we already have one successful system that manages to decentralize a highly centralized system. Ethereum is ultimately a decentralization of the interbanking settlement layer to some part, plus a lot more features, but that's like the baseline feature. And how did it do so? Well, it did it by taking all that code and all that work that is now bunched up in this interbank settlement layer and open sourced it, right? There's a lot of effort that went into the Ethereum client. Open sourcing it made it so easy to use that validators can now run such a complex system, and it's much easier to innovate. Now you can build lending, swapping on top of that, and it's a much shorter distance to contribute something valuable. This ultimately leads to innovation and also enables decentralization, because you can have individual actors contribute. Now, the second part is verifiable execution. We're not going to get to that bit in this presentation, but also verifiable execution helps you make things simpler because you have less trust assumptions. Where are we today? We're building systems. I think Flashbot's built our builder and Bob. That is a trustless builder. We published yesterday ERC 7815, which is a call for solvers and routers to make a standardized interface to DEX liquidity to make solving easier, ultimately then leading to Tycho, which is a open source tool to index and simulate and execute over DEX liquidity. And the same for order books and UIs. There are open questions there. The future, though, goes much further, and I'm excited about a lot of applications that are still to come. If you have the starting pieces for a decentralized trade supply chain, such as an open source indexer, then you can easily or more easily move further down the skill tree and build an open source solver. Once you have an open source solver, you can have a trustless solver in a TE or in any other cryptographically verifiable way. Once you're there, you can maybe also do trustless 6DEX arbitrage, eliminating more of the value capture and centralization vectors. Or if you have a trustless auction, you finally can have second price auctions, which are significantly more efficient and less effort for the participants. Now, this is just the starting point. I think that we can go way further than just this first skill tree I drew here. So yeah, I encourage you to think about the entire trade supply chain when you think about decentralizing DeFi. It's not just about decentralizing the settlement layer. Of course, that's where we have to start. But there are many other open questions yet to decentralizing and making trustless the entire trade supply chain. The tools to get there are open sourcing, difficult things like solving and building standards together so that we're composable and we have lower barriers to entry, and furthering our ability to have verifiable execution. If you want to work on these things, you're a researcher, router, solver, DEX, reach out, and we're happy to help you build those projects.
Thank you, thank you. That was the end of the time that we have today for our lightning talk, and the end of the day and the programming for today on this stage. I hope everybody had a wonderful